we've talked to record company folks, and we've talked to agents and managers and producers and sound engineers, but we've yet to talk to a publicist. And it seems to be that one area that certainly we haven't been able to grasp what you do and why it works and why it's important.
Well, in the arts and the performing arts, like anything else, if you're doing something in a vacuum, nobody hears about it. You can be doing all sorts of recording, you can be performing, but if nobody knows what you're up to or what might be unique or interesting about it, how are they going to know to come see you or hear you or buy?
So would it be safe to say that you may not get gigs for artists, but once the artist has a gigs, you help them get an audience?
Yes, I help them get an audience by getting it out in the media. I'm not fully responsible for it, but it's part of a sort of a communication. It's part of the communication between artists, musicians, media, potential concert goers, all of that. So the more that the word is out there, the better it is.
So when a artist is being talked about in a magazine or on a radio station or in a newspaper or on social media, a lot of that has to do with the fact that a publicist has made that connection to say, you check this artist out.
Yes, I'm the person who is usually writing the press release. Press release is kind of a one-sheeter in the old days when you did things without the internet. It's a description of your event, what you do, a brief biography, what the event is, a description of it, why it's exciting, why people would want to come. And that's very specific to a concert. Now I also do, for example, CD releases. If someone is releasing a CD or whatever they're releasing in these days, there are various kinds of releases now that, since CDs are not as prevalent.
How much of the role of the publicist is based on their ability to write and to market and to position versus having the contacts of knowing who to send these things to?
It's kind of a fine balance of both of those things. You have to certainly be a really solid communicator in written word. You definitely have to be good at talking to people too. Occasionally it's less so with musicians and performing artists, but occasionally you're the spokesperson. Often I'm the contact, or I'm the liaison between, say, a concert series or a festival or any of those things. So I have to be a really good communicator no matter what as a publicist. The part about the connections, they don't come fast or easy, and they change all the time.
How does an artist hire a publicist? Do you work on a case-by-case basis, like a project basis, or do you have a publicist on staff?
It depends on what it is. Obviously, larger musicians, like better-known musicians, will have someone on staff. There's still usually contracts because you're not working for a company. Like occasionally, I am through a management company with one of the major artists that I work with. I work also through a management company from another country even. I can be on staff, for example, if I'm doing publicity for an art center. I could also be on contract, depending on whether it's just when they need an extra push. You know what I'm saying?
Without being crass, how does the artist pay you? What is it? Do you get paid by the hour? Do you get paid by the story, the contacts?
By the hour. It's hours. It can't be by commission in any way, because I have to be paid fairly for the work that I'm doing. So what I do when I'm working on contract, which I usually am with artists, I find out what it is they're looking for, exactly what skills of mine they're going to need, the amount of time that I think might be involved once we go back and forth and talk about what their needs are. Then I give them a quote.
Do you have artists that go, okay, I need these things I need done. So I don't have connections to radio and to newspaper and the media, but I'm really awesome at social media. So I'm going to do that part. Can you do that part? Will you do those kind of relationships?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I sometimes work as part of a team, even with depending on who I'm working with. And again, it's not always with artists. It's
Right.
sometimes, for art centers or whatever, where they handle certain things and I handle other things. Sometimes I'm doing it all. I'm doing absolutely everything, including the social media. Other times I'm doing part of the social media, or we send things back and forth. We kind of work at a relationship where some of us, where we both do certain things. I do that with Collingwood Festival, for example, with our artistic director. We have a really good relationship where we trust each other to put what needs to go out there, and we go back and forth, and it just all keeps rolling.
We started off this part of the conversation with you saying it's beneficial for artists, even if they're not going to do their own publicity, to get an understanding of how to do it, or
Mm-hmm.
to get a feel for what it is.
Yes.
Is it possible for an artist to do their own publicity?
If they have the time and if they have a knack for it. I mean, obviously, you have to do it to get a knack for it, but some people are just, like I said, some people just really take to it and they know what to do. And there are other people who just don't have a grasp of it at all. You get people who over promote themselves. Like there's a danger of that on social media, over promoting and over tagging, and there are all kinds of, what will we call it? All kinds of mismanners things, etiquette. So, I mean, there are things you should learn and look at before you decide to do anything yourself. There are lots of places on the internet where you can find a bit of info about kind of do's and don'ts and tips and that kind of thing.
How does someone choose a publicist? What do you look for? Are some publicists better for some people than others, or is it just there's those who have experience and are good at it and those who are just starting?
You kind of have to look at style of music, because obviously it's good if someone understands. They don't necessarily have to be an expert on the music, but they have to understand how to promote it to the market for that music. For example, I don't know everything about classical music, but I know how to promote it, and I know when to ask questions. I know how to ask questions when I don't know something. So I always make sure that, with my clients, that whatever their message is that they want out, that it's correct, and that all the spelling of all of the foreign composers, etc. So I mean, there is that. You definitely want to be specific in terms of the messages that you're getting out, in terms of who it's supposed to go to.
So you got to know your audience, in not just in terms of your music audience, but the audience in terms of the media who's going to grab it to use for their audience.
Yes.
Let's get into your background, because you weren't originally a publicist. You're actually an artist yourself. You've been a performer for many years.
Yes, I'm a few things. I actually did go through to be a publicist in school, more or less. I began in graphic design and then fine arts, and then I did a total switch, and I realized that nobody was really teaching us how to promote ourselves as artists, and that was visual art. And what ended up happening was I never planned on becoming a musician. I'm a professional jazz vocalist. I began more in the roots, folk, blues, kind of acoustic, eclectic end of things. Long time ago now, like over 25 years ago. And I had to promote myself. And I also what happened was concert series that I was playing in realized that I knew how to promote myself and also what they were doing, and I started getting hired to do concert series, and it just burgeoned from there. I had all these skills anyways, and it just all kind of had to come full circle. So that's kind of how that happened.
Tell us about some of the bigger projects that you've worked on.
Well, most recent one, which is of course how you found me, is the Collingwood Summer Music Festival. This was I'm their official publicist. I did their first year too, and of course the second year did not happen because nothing happened that year.
I was going to ask you how much you dreaded having to be the publicist for a big music festival in the middle of a pandemic.
Actually, I wasn't feeling hesitant at all. I mean, I worked with Daniel, I worked with the board, and we worked with what we had, and Daniel had already figured out, that's Daniel 𝗕𝗿𝗄𝗶𝘀, our artistic director, but he already, throughout the pandemic, he made a point of teaching himself everything he possibly could about doing live stream performing himself. So it really wasn't that hard. I just did all the things I normally do.
Right. A project's a project. It just
and I did a lot online because of course so much is online now, and that's another point I wanted to make about Publicity too, is so much of this is done. There are a lot of bloggers now, as there is less traditional media, there are more bloggers, and you constantly have to be keeping on top of who's doing what and what staff is changing with the traditional outlets because they change all the time. But you also have to keep on top of who is writing about what.
And who's hot and who's got an audience.
Yeah. And they come and go. There's a lot of that. Okay, so that's one larger client. Another one from your area, with your larger area, would be Midland Cultural Center. I did a lot of publicity for them, probably over about 5 years or more. And I wasn't officially hired on staff. I was on contract, and I did a lot of specific markets for them. So, they've done a lot in folk and acoustic and roots when Eugene Ray was the AD, or the ED, I should say, the manager of the center, and he's now moved off to Maritimes. So things have changed there now. So I did a lot of work with them. So I also knew a lot of media that connected to the media where you are in Collingwood. So things always have a way of one thing leading to the next thing, even when you don't know. Larger contracts, I've done a lot of touring publicity. I worked with a French guitarist who's from France, French Algerian, world-class acoustic guitarist, 𝗕𝗿𝗲𝗄𝗏. I've done, my goodness, probably 5 tours with him across North America where I don't get to go with him. People go, do you get to go? You're the publicist. No, I don't get to go coast to coast across the States and Canada, but where I actually do, all the publicity, and I'm connected with all the venues. It's quite a coordination effort. And these are long tours. They can be anywhere from 3 to 6 months. So I've done a number of those. I've also done them for him in the UK and Ireland. So my scope's pretty far. Another major artist that I've done a fair bit of work with in recent years before COVID is she's a Grammy-nominated bluegrass artist, Claire Lynch. She has moved to Canada. She married a Canadian husband a few years back, and she eventually came here, but she is a well-known Nashville artist, and I've done cross Canada touring with her. So there's some of my major ones. I've done all kinds of smaller art centers, around my area, and I can work anywhere.
What's the biggest mistake people do when they do publicity wrong?
Oh boy, where do I start? No, actually, there are some specific things. One of them I mentioned earlier is over promoting,
Over-tagging.
Yeah, all sorts of things like that. It's because of social media. There are people who just make themselves nuisances. So don't be a nuisance. I'm not saying you shouldn't follow up. Of course, you have to follow up, but you kind of have to pay attention to the responses you're getting, if you're getting any, and it's a fine line on that one. One of the other ones I mentioned was overselling yourself.
Yeah.
Describe yourself as being good at what you do, but don't overdo it. And always, I don't know if I'll list this under Floyd. I'll put it in a more positive way. You know, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar, as my father. He was actually a union leader. He worked for RCA Victor for years in mid-management. Yeah, I mean, be polite to the people you're dealing with. If you're not getting what you want or what you think you deserve, be humble. You don't see it a lot, but you do see pockets of, you know, you do see people getting frustrated. Well, you know, who are more established, for example,
Right.
and they feel like they should be getting more attention. But the problem is that everybody is approaching the same media, especially the, you know, the higher up. Like if you're trying to get written about in the Globe and Mail or Toronto Star, which is almost all freelance news now, by the way.
Right.
You know, CBC, it's not easy. CBC's changed so much. You just have to, you know, you can be firm, but you still have to always, you know, you don't have to be an ass kisser, another word or term, but you should always, you know, bear in mind that you're asking them to help you. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Again, it's having that relationship. There is, like, as you mentioned, there's a bit of sales involved in this.
Yeah. It's always about nuance and balance, like anything else.
Well, Brenda, this has been very valuable information. Thank you so much for joining us here on Spotlight.
You're welcome.
Thanks for watching this Spotlight segment. If you enjoyed it, check out the full episode. There's always more to check out.